Greetings, YouTube! The Doctor is in. Dr. Urius Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on Dungeons and Dragons. And today we are going back again. This is the last of these videos that I am doing. We are going to be going over the third level of G3, Hall of the Fire Giant King. And here's the map over here on the side. The cover here of this great 1978 module written by Gary Gygax. So we're going to be talking about that and a whole lot more, so don't go anywhere and stay tuned. All right, before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a question or a comment. Don't forget to hit that notification bell, and don't forget to share this video. And if you are interested, I have two of my works that I have written, two modules of my own, two adventures, Vault of the Worm and The Painted Rock. Both of these are available on Dungeon Masters Guild. Links are below. All right, the background premise for these adventures, we start with the steadying of the Hill Giant Chief, and then we go to the glacial rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, and finally the Hall of the Fire Giant King. Players start out, they're hired to investigate attacks by giants and giant kin, so that includes trolls and ettins and ogres and orcs and hill giants and fire giants and frost giants and stone giants and cloud giants, and all the giants seem to be getting together to attack an area. At this point in the game, it was in Gary's game set in Greyhawk, but these weren't necessarily in Greyhawk. They were just kind of a generic setting. Not a lot was actually out during this time. The Monster Manual had come out about not quite a year before this, in the late winter of 77, and then the Player's Handbook had come out literally like a month and a half before these three modules came out, and then G1, G2, and G3 all came out at the same. So players have been hired, etc., by the local authorities to investigate why the giants are attacking. They go to the steading of the Hill Giant Chief, which is a big fort. They find some clues. They find their way to the glacial rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. They find some more clues, and they end up at the Hall of the Fire Giant King, and they discover that the Drow, or the Drow, however you want to say it, are behind the attacks. They're the masterminds behind the giants getting together, and the giants are actually doing the bidding of the Dark Elves to attack society. So let's get into the rest of this. We've already gone over levels 1 and 2. Level 1 was like the main halls of the Fire Giant King himself with the fire giants. Level 2 comprised some kind of dungeon levels with some regular rooms and then some caverns. And then level 3 is going to be all natural caverns at this point as we go very, very deep down underneath the halls of the Fire Giant King, which are somewhere under a volcano in a range of mountains. So I've got the map over to the side over here, and I've got my notes here, and we're going to go over this. So I'm going to highlight a few of the key things in almost every room, but not every room. And like I said, in the map, you can see that this is mostly a cavernous area. And it does say in here, level 3 is all natural, the tunnels and caverns showing no marks of being hollowed out except for the entranceway to the level from above and where the exit from the level is. So, a little bit of workmanship in these, but not a lot. Everything is natural. There's not a lot of light here, and there's a variety of different creatures in here. The first thing that we see, and I've got a question written out about this in it, are these lava tubes? You know, there is a river of lava on this map, and did the lava carve these out or not? That is a question I have. You know, Gary didn't really go into that too much. The second thing that we see here Right down here are the wandering monsters. I'm going to change this over to select. So we've got the wandering monster table here, and we've got encounters. 1 in 12 chance, check every turn. Now remember, a turn in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was every 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes, you're going to have a 1 in 12 chance. That's about an 8% chance of getting either wandering trolls, a couple fire giant guards with some hellhounds, or some Drow watchers. And these are going to be a fighter magic user of pretty high level and a couple of just regular fighters. But the Drow, remember, this was a module that was set for about 9th level characters, and the Drow are extremely powerful considering their low armor classes, and we're gonna get into that. So let's highlight that really quick. Let me see if I can find my cursor here. Yes, right there. Okay, so let's go to encounter number 1. So with the previous 2 levels of this and the previous other adventures in this series, there are groups of rooms that Gary put together. So the first group of rooms is essentially rooms 1, 2, and 3. And then we are going to go to rooms 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then down to 11, 12, 13, 14. 15 is kind of on its own, but it's really 15, 16, 17, and then 18, 19, and 20. So there's I think 5 different groups of rooms here. So we're going to start going through these. So room number 1, it just says cavern. And there are 3 ropers in this room. This is the first appearance of the roper themselves here. I don't know. Since this is the 3rd adventure for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons that was ever written, there are no other ropers in the Hill Giant or the Frost Giant Jarl's adventures. So these are the first ones. And what's interesting to note here is that the description, if you read the description for the ropers in the monster manual, they say that ropers have a chance of having a gem in their digestive tract. And in this one, Gary actually put one in. He says each has 1 base value 100 gold piece gem per hit die in its internal digestive organs. And they are 12, 11, and 10 hit die. So these are pretty big gems that are there. And as far as I know, this is also the first instance of player characters coming in and cutting up one of the monsters so that they can get a treasure item out of their belly. And now, we see, because this is the first instance of this kind of carried on from group to group to group, that, we see players at tables that, cut every monster open to see what they can get out of their stomachs after they've swallowed it. Now, rooms 2, 3, and 4 are pretty generic. They're just caves. There's some glowing stuff in there. There's some hungry beetles in room 2. They're fire beetles. Those are pretty innocuous with very little hit points. There's some fire lizards in the cavern number 3 that look like false dragons. And then there are some hellhounds in cave number 4. But remember, I said that these come in groups basically of groups of 3 or 4 rooms. 1, 2, and 3 are a group of rooms, and then we are going to jump over to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 as one kind of larger group. 4 and 5 really do go together. So in 4, we've got hellhounds, and these are guard dogs for a group of fire giants that are here, which are in area number 5. There are 8 fire giants in cavern number 5. And you can see their hit points right there. They're on guard, and they're reserved here by Snur's orders. The other thing that we have here is Snur also was ordered by the Drow to do things. So, and in case Snur and his queen, Cream Fruppy or Fruppy escaped, they can be found here as well. So the Great Vaulted Cavern, which is cavern number 6, there is a large illusion of a huge sleeping dragon that's atop a mound of treasure. It's actually a Gorgon. Again, this is probably the first appearance of a Gorgon in an adventure. It's been charmed and instructed to ignore such creatures as hellhounds and fire giants and trolls. And it obeys the Drow. So I don't know what the Drow have to do with this. It doesn't really say, but it's been charmed. It obeys them. It doesn't say that the Drow charmed them, but it says it obeys the Drow and it ignores kind of the residents of this dungeon here. What it has to do with the next room also is kind of a mystery, which we don't know. So there's some questions I have about this. It's a very big room. There's only one creature in it. Remember, these squares are all 10-foot squares. They are not 5-foot squares. Then we come to room number 7, which is the Treasure Trove Cave. And there is a red dragon, a real one, an ancient red dragon, very large, 88 points, has an armor class of -1, named Brazimal. And it speaks and uses the following spells. Now, it does not have charm, so it did not charm that Gorgon that was in Area 6. But it does have spells. That is typically a thing that happened with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, where we had dragons that had spells, particularly ancient dragons. And then there's a boulder in front of his cavern. This is not a big room, so the dragon is kind of stuck in this room. It's sleeping. You can move the boulder out of the way and go into Cavern 7 and fight the dragon. So it'll awaken him almost exclusively if the boulder is moved. And then, as usual, Gary goes into a lot of detail about all the treasure that you can find. So there's a big pile of copper. There's a huge pile of silver. Electrum. We love the Electrum pieces. Gold. Not a lot of platinum. And then he goes through all the jewels and the gems that are there. There is a dragon slaying. There's a red dragon slaying sword that is there. But I don't think the players... And I've played through this before. And we got it after we slew the dragon, but we never knew that it was there until after we slew the dragon. It does say all abilities to be determined randomly, which means that you could generate a intelligence sword if you wanted. Now, the rules for all the magic items were in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And remember, I said that this adventure was published in 1978, and around July of 1978 to be particular. The Dungeon Master's Guide, which had all the rules for all the magic items, didn't actually come out until August 1979. So we had the Monster Manual and the Player's Handbook, and the Player's Handbook was brand new when these came out. So we had both of those, and a lot of the combat tables and things were also in the DMG. So there wasn't a lot there for players to go on. So I'm not sure how they went through this, but the descriptions for the magic items were not really in here. They just were in bold, but those actually eventually came out in the Dungeon Master's Guide. So a DM could actually make these up if they wanted to. Then we come to room number 8, which is a Drow guard room. So this, again, is the first appearance of the Drow on this level. We were introduced to them on the 2nd level, and we'll go over their description a little bit in the back of the module itself. So there's a 6th level, 2 4 levels, and 2 2nd level fighters. And it goes through some of the things that they have here. So they're kind of on guard. And then numbers 9, cave number 9, which is separate from 8. It's separate kind of on its own, is a cavern with a bunch of piercers, which are like the stalactites that sit against the ceiling, and then they will come down and do damage. And there's treasure in here and a bunch of shattered skulls and bones all over the place. And then cavern number 10 was a singing cavern, and we had a huge gray ooze, a couple of them that were here that would be at this pool that was in this cavern itself. Then we come to 11, 12, and 13. This forms its own like cavern complex. with 11, 12, 13, 14, but we're going to talk about 11, 12, and 13, which are called the Stinking Caverns. And this is where there are a bunch of trolls. So remember the fire giants are using trolls as kind of guards and strong hands and things like that. And there are a lot of trolls in here. Again, these rooms look small. They're really not as big as you think they are. They are 10-foot squares, but there are a total of 29 trolls between 11 and 12, and then another 27 trolls that are in room number 13. For 56 trolls out of all of them. There is some treasure here. Those have got to be some stinky, stinky rooms. And then there is a troll chieftain here. So this is kind of like where the trolls, I guess, hang out, when they're not doing things for the fire giants. In cavern number 14, which is a rather narrow, maybe like 10 to 20 foot wide cavern, there is this greenish and greenish blue deposits and streaks of rock in here. There is also a green slime that is growing on the passage roof and in the pool at the end. And it covers like a huge, huge portion of the space just south of the pool. And it'll drop on creatures. Now, there's not really any mechanics that are in here right now for green slimes. Remember, the monster manual had come out, so there is green slime in the monster manual, but they didn't really go over any of the mechanics of this. So there have been mechanics that have been put in later versions of Dungeons and Dragons for like 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th edition for green slime, and it's a bit different. So my question is, what are the mechanics behind that green slime that is here? So then we leave out of that southern sector of caverns and we go up to rooms 15, 16, and 17. And again, these are more Drow areas that we've got various different kinds of Drow that are here. So in 15, we've got what's called the Gray Cavern. There's a bunch of Drow in here. It says 2 guards watch each of the 6 ways which meet at this cavern. There are 6 other guards. These 18 Drow are all equipped as 3rd level fighters, each having 18 hit points. Each is equipped with a shield, a chainmail, and a +2 dex bonus for an armor class of 0. Now remember I said that ancient dragon in number 7 had an armor class of -1, which is 1 lower, 1 better than the armor class of these Drow. And remember, in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, the lower the armor class, the better. It was a reverse scale instead of an ascending scale. And they're all armed with +1 daggers, +1 short swords, hand crossbows, and poison darts. And they explain what the poison does. It's kind of an unconscious, stunning poison. They explain what the poison does at the end in the description of the Drow themselves. Now, these Drow in number 15, and there's a lot again, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways to come in here. They don't really explain the stairs that are here. I think the stairs that are here are stairs that come down here from level 2. So I can recall that there was an area in level 2 that came down into this Drow area. Now these guys are all led by a 5th level fighter who's got a -4 armor class, a 9th level fighter who has a -5 armor class. So some of these armor classes for these Drow get super ridiculous. They get super low. And then finally, we've got a fighter magic user, 4th level, 6th level, 4th level fighter, 6th level magic user, who has an armor class of -3, and he's got this wand of viscid globs, which basically can shoot these sticky globs that will pin people to the ground. And then they showed us his spell. So he does have a lightning bolt. He has a single one. He's got a slow spell. I look at these spells, and these spells all have use in combat. Gary did like to put spells for use in combat. Even ventriloquism would, as kind of like a stealthier way of doing things to throw the magic user's voice to trick the players. And of course, they have some treasure, and then he goes through all of the individual spells that each of the Drow can use themselves. So cavern number 16 is a smaller cavern, and there are 9 female Drow in place, and 8 of them are 4th level fighters. And then there is a leader of them, which is a cleric fighter, who is Nadaline, and she is opposed to Eklavdra. So this is a rival gang of Drow that are here to keep an eye on Eklavdra and her Drow and what they are doing. And if you recall, Eklavdra is the Drow that has been manipulating all the giants to attack all of the settlements on the surface world. And here we can see a little bit more about Nadaline. It says she's here to check up on Eklavdra, her rival, and she will be suspicious of any creature entering her current abode. So it is possible that the players could strike a deal with them. Maybe, maybe not. I've seen groups that have done that, and I've seen groups who have not. So, and then we get her stats. So she is an 8th level cleric and a 7th level fighter. She has an armor class of a -6, which is ridiculously low. And she's armed with a +3 mace and this thing called the Demon Staff, which can cause fear. It can do a bunch of damage. That damage can only be healed under certain circumstances and very slowly. And then it can also be used to call forth a type 1 demon. Remember, demons were type 1 through 6 in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Or the holder could turn into a type 3 demon for 5 rounds. Now, they've changed the names of the demons from, and the names were actually in the monster manual as well, but they changed the names because of the satanic panic that happened in the 80s. And then they kind of went back, but they never went back to the type part. So, pretty cool weapon. And then we've got her spells. She's got all the way up to 4th level spells. So she's not as powerful as Eklavdra, but she is still very powerful. One thing I do want to point out about this, and there are some arrows on this map. You'll see them at the entrance to Cavern 16, and that is like a ball-bearing trap. So there is a fine tripwire. It's set. Anybody coming into the cavern, this torrent of small iron spheres is going to pour out into the last 20 feet of the passageway, and they're going to cause people to fall down and make a lot of noise and things. So Nadaline and her Drow entourage will be warned that there are intruders coming into the area. So room number 17, or cavern number 17, is kind of interesting. It is halfway connected to caverns 15 and 16 where the Drow are, but it is not occupied by Drow. It is occupied by 3 mind flayers, and as far as I know, this is the first appearance of mind flayers in an adventure. Again, they are in the Monster Manual that was published in 1977, so that had been out for a while. The mind flayers are here to spy on the Drow. They plan to observe events, and the Dark Elves ignore them. Now, that statement means that the Dark Elves know that they're here, which I'm a little, confused by. If they know they're there, then, why don't they do something about them? Because it's clear to me that the Mind Flayers and the Drow are not necessarily friends later on when we get into Descent into the Depths and Shrine of the Kuatoa and Vault of the Drow, which are the next set of adventures that do connect to this. These Mind Flayers do have some treasure, and they have an Amulet of the Plains and a Tome of Clear Thought. But remember that these were not fully described until the Dungeon Master's Guide came out almost a year later after this came out. So, that, I guess that would be up to the DM to talk about. There were some supplements that had come out that had talked about some magic items, but the full Dungeon Master's Guide that really went into these and did all these descriptions hadn't come out yet. So Cavern 18, pretty small cavern. Again, it's a guard room. It says it's exactly the same as 8, so there's more Drow in here, and they were typically just fighters, so there's the same as area number 8, which means that there's Drow in 8, 15, 16, and 18, and that means the Mind Flayers in 17 are completely surrounded. So I don't know how they got in here. Maybe there is a passageway in here they came in, another hole in here somewhere. But they don't really explain how the Mind Flayers got into 17. But 18 is guarded by some Drow. And then we come to 19 and 20. So there is a river of lava in this chamber, this cavern. It's one big cavern kind of split into two parts. The southern part is area number 19, and the northern part is area number 20. And apparently there's a rope bridge that crosses the river of lava. And I'm not really sure how a rope bridge works against a very hot river of lava. You would think that it would probably burn up. But that's what Gary put in here. He put a rope bridge. So on the south side are some salamanders who are enjoying a change of climate. They like the hot weather, the heat and the humidity and the river of lava itself. And they leave the Drow alone. Now there's some Drow that are in the northern section, which is number 20. And they are members of Eklabdra's group. So they are being spied on by the Drow that are in number 16. And they're here kind of as a rear guard in case Eklabdra needs to escape. She could also be here too. And then there is an 8th level female fighter who is particularly favored by Eklabdra that is here as well. Now there is a small part of this that is in a different area in this passageway. So let's talk about that passageway. So in that passageway, you'll see there's a small A on the map, and that is the location of a charmed lurker above. Again, this is the first appearance of a lurker above, which is this strange aberrant creature that falls down and traps and smothers anything that it's told to or that it wants to eat. In this case, because it's charmed, it would be any non-Drow or intruders. And then we've got this strange tunnel that goes down. And it looks like there is hoist equipment that needs to be set up, but you could set it up and you could bring across supplies and things if you needed across the river of lava so that you can go down that tunnel. And the tunnel leads to D1, which is Descent into the Depths, which is the next thing that we're going to do. But it says, a special note to the Dungeon Master, if your players have enjoyed these scenarios or simply this single scenario, and you intend to continue it with the balance of the modules which follow G3, their party will find an adamantite, so we didn't say adamantine, an adamantite tube when they search Area 20, and a scroll and a map accidentally dropped by one of the fleeing noble Drow. So the scroll contains a wish spell. Gary Gygax loved the wish spell. And there's some rules for, wishes that are in the player's handbook. And there's more rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide, which hadn't been out yet. And then the map is a continuation of the Drow escape route, showing a vast maze of passages on a large scale. You get this map in the next adventure, which is D1, Descent into the Depths, or Descent into the Depths of the Earth, which this world isn't really the Earth, it's O-Earth. And so you can use that map, and you can give that map out to your players if you start to do D1. So at the end of this adventure, we get a full description of the Drow, the Dark Elves, and it talks about their kind of generic history, and it gives a pretty good description of their mechanics, what they look like, some of their culture, some of the items that they carry, like their special Drow cloaks and their boots and their weapons. But what isn't really mentioned here very much is Loth or Loth. So we go to an extension of their armor, which is the special chainmail and the bucklers that they have, and the number that appear, and the fighters and the clerics and the wizards or the magic users at the time, and how they move, and some of the mechanics with them being surprised. So a lot, with the mechanics going through all that. And finally, Gary had a note regarding all of their items, because all these items that the players are going to find are all magical, kind of. They're kind of magical. Let me turn my camera back on and I'll go, they're magical. So they're irradiated, and they will lose their magical abilities if they are not constantly irradiated. They once they have been in kind of the Drow area, which we're going to see in the next set of modules, for a certain amount of time, they become magical, and then that magic will last a certain amount of time. And if they're ever exposed to sunlight, they basically just disintegrate. So it talks about all their items and things like that. But again, like I said, I didn't really see anything in here that mentioned Loth. And I have a question that I've written down in my notes here, is that had she been created yet? But in the next set of adventures, like right off the bat, we start to learn about Loth and get descriptions of her. So, all right, that is a video that I have for everybody. I hope everybody enjoyed, and I will catch everybody later.